So I recently acquired a CRT television with a built-in VCR, and have been watching some old VHS tapes from my childhood. These include the Star Wars trilogy, which later inspired me to become a filmmaker. Coneheads, which is kind of a random and wild movie for kids, but it was PG, so my parents were cool with it. And both Star Trek Generations and Star Trek First Contact. I didn't get First Contact until I was a little older. When I saw it in theaters at age 4, the opening scared the crap out of me. But Star Trek Generations got a lot of plays. And I mean a lot. I must have watched this movie once a week as a 3- and 4-year-old. I was really into science fiction at a young age, something all these movies have in common, and I would just watch it over and over and over. As I've grown older, I feel the movie has grown with me, and I've learned to appreciate its themes of life, death, and purpose, something I couldn't quite grasp as a small child. I think it's the most human of the TNG films, and I've always felt it best captured the aesthetic and feeling of the show. Rewatching Generations on VHS for the first time in probably 20 years had me asking myself so many questions, and it inspired me to make my first YouTube video essay. I really cherish this film, and I thought, what better time to talk about it than on the 30th anniversary, which is today, the day I'm uploading this. So let's look back and discuss why I think Star Trek Generations is a criminally underrated entry in the Star Trek film series. Now, I'm aware of all the criticisms Generations has received over the years. If you've never seen Mr. Plinkett's hilarious review from back in the day, go check it out. It's a brutal takedown of Generations, and asks questions like, why try to force Kirk and crew into a TNG movie? If you're gonna do it, why are Spock, Bones, and the rest of the crew missing from the prologue? How does the rocket on Veridian 3 reach the sun so quickly? Why does Picard go right back to before the rocket launches with Kirk, instead of just going back a couple of days and punching Saurin in the face in 10 Forward? All valid criticisms, most of them a result of this movie being made so quickly after TNG ended. As revealed on the excellent commentary track with the writers, Ronald D. Moore and Brandon Braga, they had strict criteria they had to follow with the script, including being required to come up with some way to get Picard and Kirk together. Not only that, but the film was rushed into production immediately after the show wrapped without a break. With all that aside though, I think there's 2 incredibly strong elements that really work with this movie. The first is that it does a great job of capturing the aesthetic of the show in a cinematic way, as well as giving, mostly, the entire crew something to do, versus their roles in the later films. The second is that the film's central theme is the strongest of the 4 films. Kirk, Picard, Data, and Saurin struggle with how they deal with and approach their mortality, and this is the glue that holds the whole film together. I also think Saurin is the most fleshed out and evil of the 4 villains, but we'll get to that in a bit. Let's first talk about the characters and the aesthetic. I love the opening holodeck sequence where the crew roleplays as 19th century sailors in order to honor Worf for his promotion to lieutenant commander. The original idea for this sequence, as revealed in the commentary, would have been an action-packed rescue mission featuring the Enterprise D crew saving a small Starfleet outpost from a Romulan attack. It was Jerry Taylor, one of the producers of TNG, who suggested on opening with an offbeat moment with the crew instead. Hence, the holodeck sequence was born. I just love seeing the crew fraternizing without a care in the world, and it's a great callback to some of the fun holodeck episodes. I love Picard and Riker connecting over the freedom these sailors once had, and Geordi having to explain to Data what is and isn't funny is a great reflection of their relationship. I've always loved Data and Geordi's connection, and we never really see much of that outside of Generations. Yes, Worf and Beverly are the butt of the joke in this scene, and I don't disagree that they are the only 2 characters in the film that don't have much to do, especially Worf, who's really only interesting in Star Trek First Contact. I've heard some say it's too mean-spirited of a scene, and the crew is unlike their characters in the show, but I'd say this is a reflection of how the actors were in real life, always joking around and never taking things too seriously. The scene culminates with some wonderful yet subtle acting from Patrick Stewart, when Picard discovers that his brother and nephew have been killed in a fire on Earth. Deanna brings some much-needed compassion in this scene. In fact, her and Guinan bring the pathos to the film. There's no denying that Generations is a very masculine story, focusing on men dealing with their life and purpose. Picard must put his own emotions aside and lead his crew, but would not be able to do this without the support of Deanna and Guinan. Both Moore and Braga never liked the scene with Picard crying in front of Deanna, but I think we need to see this side of Picard struggling with his emotions so he can then lead later in the film, specifically in the cinematography scene, which I'll get to. Once the holodeck party is over, we then cut to this absolutely beautiful shot of the Enterprise D approaching the Amargosa Observatory. I gotta say, the Enterprise D is my favorite Enterprise, and it's just so damn cinematic here. I had the chance once to see this film projected on the big screen, and these shots are just breathtaking. We then cut to the bridge, and I think it's the best it's ever looked. I love how the light from the Amargosa sun beams into the now darker and moodier bridge. Obviously, the bridge on the show was made for the 4:3 aspect ratio, so they had to extend it to shoot with anamorphic lenses, and I think it totally works. It's a shame this would be the first and last time we'd see this version of the Enterprise D bridge. Later in the film, we see Geordi and Data enter 10 Forward, and this is also the best this set has ever looked. In the commentary, Moore reveals that they were finally able to get enough extras to fill 10 Forward and really make it feel like a ship with 1,000 people on board. The light here is also phenomenal and really sets the tone for Picard and Saurin's conversation. One of the elephants in the room with this film's detractors is that the uniforms are inconsistent. Half the crew is wearing TNG uniforms, and the other half is wearing DS9 uniforms. This was a result of a last-minute change to drop the new uniforms that were created for the film, as well as the costume designer not feeling the TNG uniforms would translate well to a 30-foot screen. These new uniforms actually made their way to the Generations toy line, which I had most of as a kid. My own headcanon for this, though, is that the more casual design used aboard Deep Space Nine, due to it being a more labor-intensive assignment, got such great feedback from Starfleet personnel, it was then suggested as an option for officers serving aboard standard Federation vessels. Riker's a more laid-back guy, hence he goes for the DS9 uniform, while Worf sticks to the TNG uniform because he's more structured. I've always wanted to spend more time in this short period of Star Trek canon, where either uniform was an option, before Starfleet made the unilateral decision to just go with the gray-shouldered uniforms. The combination of these uniforms with the lighting both inside and outside the ship is just perfection to me. Another thing that adds to the TNG feel of Generations is Dennis McCarthy's soundtrack. He scored 88 episodes of the TV show, and his distinct style is ever present in this film. While I do miss hearing the TNG main theme, I've always adored the Generations overture. It just has that triumphant and heroic sound that feels so close to the hope and wonder of the show. Some of my favorite tracks include Saurin Kidnaps Geordi and Prisoner Exchange. My favorite, though, is Jumping the Ravine, when Kirk rides off on his horse to find Antonia later in the film. That track always brings a big smile to my face. I can't play them here due to copyright, but I implore you to give these tracks a listen if you forgot how they sound. It's really good stuff. One last thing on aesthetic. I want to talk briefly about Geordi LaForge. Geordi is my favorite TNG character, and I've always felt he looks the best here. I much prefer the more metallic-looking visor used in the later seasons of the show, and this is the last time we see Geordi with this look. Ronald Moore says in the commentary that LeVar Burton had always campaigned to lose the visor because it robbed him of the ability to act with his eyes, but Moore always felt the visor was so distinctive and is what defined the character, and I wholeheartedly agree. Geordi lost something when he went to the ocular implants in First Contact, and I always felt it was a testament to LeVar Burton's acting to be able to perform through the visor. The visor is Geordi, and Geordi is the visor. Okay, now let's talk about the themes of Star Trek Generations. Primarily the theme of mortality, and how humans deal with it. The only other film to deal with mortality before this was Star Trek II, when Spock died, but then they ended up bringing him back in Star Trek III, somewhat defeating the purpose. Generations actually faces life and death head-on. I first want to start with Saurin, who I think is the best villain of the 4 films. The Borg Queen in First Contact always felt tacked on and unnecessary. She kind of defeats the purpose of the Borg being one hive mind if she's controlling everything. F. Murray Abraham gives a great performance as Adar Ruafo in Insurrection, but his motivation always felt a little lame. He just wanted to look young and get revenge for being outcast by the Baku. And I never bought for a second that Shinzon was supposed to be a young Picard and Nemesis. It always felt too contrived to me. Saurin, on the other hand, has a motivation that we can not only relate to as humans, but also connects to Kirk, Picard, and Data. When his family was killed by the Borg along with Guinan's, together with the remaining Elorians, they dedicated their lives to finding the Nexus, which on its surface promises to reunite them with their loved ones. If you've ever lost a loved one, and there was a possibility of reuniting with them, that's something any human being would want to pursue. However, after having their race almost completely wiped out during the prologue of the film, Guinan gives up this futile effort and decides she's going to live her life in the now. For Saurin, though, he doubles down on his efforts and goes completely mad in his quest to return to the Nexus. So mad that he'll kill millions of people to do so. One of his most defining moments in the film is when he kidnaps and tortures Geordi. He wants to know everything Geordi knows about trilithium, but Saurin doesn't even need this information. He's already been making rockets with the trilithium, and everything is in place for the final move of his master plan on Viridian 3. While it cuts away in the film, in a deleted scene and in the novelization written by J.M. Dillard, Saurin has a device that can stop Geordi's heart for moments at a time. He just tortures him for kicks. He himself has become the same evil that destroyed his entire world all those years ago. As human beings, we tend to obsess over the past and the future, never really living in the moment we're in now. We also can easily find ourselves in the trap of, if I can get this thing, then I'll be happy. Saurin, Kirk, Picard, and Data all share this to varying degrees. If Saurin can get to the Nexus, he'll be happy. If Kirk can embrace his life outside of Starfleet and marry Antonia, he'll be happy. If Picard has a family and a bloodline that will go on, he'll be happy. If Data can feel what it is to be human, he'll be complete. The reality in life, though, is that we have to find our happiness today, in the now, not in some future goal. If not, we'll be forever chasing what we think will bring us happiness, and if and when we get it, it most likely won't. Both Picard and Kirk realize once they get to the Nexus that this isn't what they really want. Picard doesn't want to be having Christmas dinner with family, and Kirk doesn't want to get married and settle down. It's all just a mirage. What they really want to do is make a difference, and the only way to do that is in the seat of that captain's chair. That is what both men's purpose is. We never see Saurin experience his Nexus, but I've always wondered that once he got there, did he see through it like Kirk and Picard did? Would reuniting with a mirage of his family give him happiness, or would he still feel the same? Would he have felt any regret for what he did to get there? The only character that's really living in the moment is Data, as he discovers what it feels to be human through the emotion chip. He experiences humor with Geordi aboard the observatory, fear when Saurin threatens his life and kidnaps Geordi, anxiety and guilt when dealing with the fact that he abandoned his best friend, excitement when doing what he loves most in life, working the ops console, and overwhelming joy when he finds Spot at the end of the film. For part of the movie, though, Data doesn't want these emotions, even though this is what he's always been wanting. The best scene in the movie is probably the stellar cartography scene, because this is where all the themes converge. Data doesn't want to deal with these emotions anymore, and neither does Picard. He's forced to stop this madman while also grieving the loss of his family. Picard is the leader, though, and he has to show Data and himself that we have to integrate these feelings into our lives and learn to live with them, or they will control who we are, just like they've done to Saurin. As we move into the final act of Generations, this is where people have the most problems. Even Moore and Braga revealed in the commentary that they wish Picard and Kirk's meeting had been a battle versus the two Titans on their respective bridges, which then would have culminated in them working together to stop Saurin. Going back to the opening on the holodeck, Kirk and Picard making eggs together is much more offbeat, and in my opinion, really helps to juxtapose what these men's purposes really are. I love when Picard follows Kirk into his bedroom, and they end up at Kirk's uncle's barn in Idaho. Picard says that this isn't Kirk's bedroom, and Kirk quips that it's better. Basically for Kirk, horseback riding and adventuring is better than sex. But Kirk still decides to go find Antonia, because he thinks settling down is what will make him happy, and not get him killed. When he jumps the ravine, though, and he feels nothing as he looks up at the mirage of Antonia, he finally sees through the bullshit that is the Nexus. Picard shows him that they need to go follow their true purpose, and the one thing that will actually fulfill them, to make a difference in this galaxy. Another elephant in the room amongst fans is Kirk's death. Most fans feel he should have gone out in a way more fitting to the larger-than-life nature of his character, and for the longest time, I agreed with this sentiment. But after really thinking about it, Kirk goes out the way he was always meant to, making a difference. Death is never satisfying. He doesn't need any fanfare or accolades. This is about his journey, and not ours. More important than dying alongside his crew, Kirk dies with the man that he has the most in common with in the entire galaxy. The only man to truly understand his purpose and existence, Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Kirk's mission in life is now complete, and it's time to go on to the next mission, death. Kirk's last line is, "Oh my," and Shatner's delivery tells me that he's not sad, but instead overwhelmed by the magnitude of what's next, something that's even greater than him. We then get to the final scene of the movie, between Picard and Riker, as they scavenge through the remains of the Enterprise D bridge. Because Generation shot immediately after All Good Things wrapped, the crew always felt that this was the final TNG scene, not the poker game between the crew. I agree with that, and always feel emotional here, as this was really the last time we'd see the Enterprise D, not counting Star Trek Picard Season 3. Picard's final speech is a culmination of the film's themes, as well as the TNG journey coming to an end. As he says, "Time is a companion who goes with us on this journey, and reminds us to cherish every moment, because it will never come again. What we leave behind is not as important as how we live. After all, we're only mortal." Riker then responds that he plans to live forever. I love this attitude, to not be worried about the end, but to just be living in the now. Every time I watch Star Trek Generations, it makes me reflect on my own life. Am I living in the moment? Am I obsessing too much on the future? And is the future what I want, or what I think I want? Is time the fire in which we burn, or is time our companion on this journey in life? I'm not saying Generations is a perfect movie, and I certainly have a nostalgic bias towards it. But it makes me ask questions, and that's something a good movie always does. What do you think of Star Trek Generations? Do you love it? Hate it? Let me know in the comments, because I'd love to talk about it. And on that, here's to 30 years of Star Trek Generations. My favorite of the TNG movies. Boldly go.